Here's a way to unintentionally wreck your child's inheritance, wreck their future, and maybe give away their entire inheritance without even meaning to. I've been seeing this like quite a bit lately, so I wanted to talk about it briefly. I wanted to let you know what things to consider when you're thinking about inheritances for children so that you don't mess it up. The call I usually get goes something like this. Yeah, I have a couple of kids. They are younger. Let's say they're 8 and 10. And, if something happens to me, I don't want them to just get the money outright when they turn 18, but I don't want to spend the money or do the time to create a trust. So what I have decided to do is I have named as a beneficiary on all of my accounts my brother Stephen, who is actually that's my brother's name, literally. My brother Stephen, with the understanding that he's going to get all of this money and then he's going to take care of the kids. Sounds pretty good, right? Let's assume that Stephen is the most upstanding person that you know. He's ultimately trustworthy, would never take the money and do something else. Let's just start from there. Obviously, if there are problems with trust, we have bigger problems anyway. But assuming there are no trust problems, then this is still a huge problem, okay? There are a few different reasons why, okay? To get to these points, we have to assume that someone has died. So I am gone. Stephen has inherited all of this money, and my kids have a guardian, or he is the guardian, it doesn't matter. The idea that he's going to use these funds to help them out in the future and also maybe make a distribution at some point in time in the future. So first things first, let's assume that Stephen dies, 6 months after I die. He doesn't have a will, but he does have kids. When he dies, all of his assets, including the assets that I have given him, are going to go to his kids or his spouse or wherever he's directed them if he does have a will. Where they are not going to go is to my kids. Let's say 6 months after I give all this money to Stephen, he gets in a car accident and he has a multi-million-dollar judgment against him. He's going to be paying for that multi-million-dollar judgment out of his own personal assets, including the assets that I just gave him. Let's say that Stephen takes these assets and puts them in a joint bank account with his wife, and then they get divorced. His wife is likely to take half of my inherited assets that were earmarked for my children wherever it is that she wants to go. Let's say that Stephen has a business and he has to file for bankruptcy and he has some personal obligations under this bankruptcy. Same thing. That money is going somewhere else, not to my kids. So the point here is you can try to do as much planning as you want when it comes to who's going to get what and having someone protect assets or hold assets for your children. But there are too many moving factors in place to really ensure that the money is used the way that you want. When also there is a better way to do it, which is a revocable living trust. We're going to get to that in a moment. Let's say, to complete this whole story, that everything goes according to plan. Stephen gets the inheritance. Nothing happens to him. He's a perfect person, never gets in trouble, never gets divorced. The money just sits there and it's being used for the kids when they're younger. And the agreement was when he turns 25, or when the kids turn 25, he's going to give them each their half of the inheritance so that they can do whatever they want with it. Let's say in 15 years, because when I died they were 10 and 8, in 15 and 17 years, he is ready to give this money to these kids. And it's been growing for 15 and 17 years. They each get $1 million. Because I had a $2 million life insurance policy. I wanted to make sure that they were protected. Stephen put that money in the stock market. It's been growing at 8% per year forever. And now, instead of $1 million each, now it's at $1.7 million each, okay, after 17 years, which is more than likely. But what's the rule of sevens? It doubles every 7 years, something like that. So could be even higher than that. But let's just say it's $1.7 million per person. Stephen goes to cut a check for $1.7 million to each of the kids. And then the tax man comes around, his CPA comes around and says, what did you do here? And he says, well, I gave this inheritance to these 2 kids. And the CPA is going to have to break the bad news to him. No, you didn't give the inheritance. You gave your own personal gift to these children. And now you're going to have to do a gift tax return for $3.4 million, reducing your lifetime giving exemption to your family to give this gift. So there are all of these different unintended consequences that are out there when you name someone to hold the money in parentheses or in quotation marks for your minor children or for anybody else. What's the solution? The solution is a revocable living trust. It will do exactly what you want it to do. You can put your brother Stephen in charge of the trust, and he can manage the funds inside of the trust, make them available to the kids at any time, and give the assets in the trust when the kids turn 25. He can do all of that without having them subject to his death, subject to lawsuits, subject to divorce, subject to his bankruptcy, and he won't have to front any gift tax return when he makes those distributions. The key here is the simplest solution is not always the easiest solution. Although a trust is actually really straightforward, it's easy to administer, it's easy to make distributions, it's easy to name your people. The downside is it costs a little bit extra upfront to make. But when you think about the value that you get, the certainty that you get, the lack of problems that you get when you have a revocable trust, it's more than worth it. Okay, so if you have minor children and you have assets that you want to give them, I would highly encourage you to create a trust. You can always change the trust in the future, and you know if something does happen to you, those assets are safe, they are secure, they will be distributed in the way that you want, and no one else can get to them. Okay, that is it. So hopefully if you like this, that's great. If you have questions, ask them in the comments. I will answer them. Follow or subscribe wherever you are if you want to get more fun information like this. And thanks for making this far. See ya.